Welcome to the very first video episode of the C2 Life. I'm Derek.
And I'm Lindsay.
And we're just experimenting with this, and we hope it becomes a helpful avenue to engage with you and help you grow in your walk with the Lord. We may have some new listeners, so I think let's take just 30 seconds and explain what the Christ-Centered Life is all about.
Yeah, so the Christ-Centered Life is a podcast where you and I sit down together and discuss really a wide variety of topics with a Christ-centered worldview. Our thinking on it is we would just like to have conversations about things really about family life, about church life, about marriage, about all these things.
Theology, politics, kind of like whatever interests us, but then also what we think people may need to hear about.
Yeah.
And then the Christ-centered part is that the thing that binds it all together is what does it look like to do these things with Jesus at the center of everything.
Right.
And so with Jesus giving us, with Christ, especially what God has done through Jesus, giving us kind of the point of reference for everything. So that's the C2 Life.
Yeah, and really ultimately, we just thought it'd be really great to set aside some time every once in a while to sit down and discuss really important things with one another without one of our 5 kids or all of our 5 kids interrupting that thought.
Yeah, this really started as like a conversation you and I would have that we happened to record, and if anybody happened to listen in, then that's good.
Yeah.
So here we have, here we have a video, and if anybody wants to watch for whatever reason, then they're welcome to join in.
That's right.
We want you to pull up a seat at the table and just kind of listen in. We wish you could be here. We wish you could speak to us through this and we could have a conversation. Yeah. We can't do that yet. Maybe a day's coming.
You know what?
We might do an episode where we have live Zoom. We just throw a Zoom link out there to some people and say, jump in and join the conversation.
That'd be fun.
That'd be really fun.
So,
but for now, it's just me and you.
That's right. And so speaking of what people want to hear, in order to kind of kick off this special episode, we asked Facebook what topics.
We did deep market research.
Okay, we did some deep market research.
Which means we posted something on Facebook and said, what do y'all want to hear about?
Right. But we just threw out there a few topics that we already had in mind to discuss to find out which ones might be the most wanted to be heard.
And there were 2. One was time sensitive.
Yes.
And the other was the most popular.
Yes.
So the time sensitive one was
to Mardi Gras or not to Mardi Gras.
What do we do with Mardi Gras?
Yeah.
But the most popular one by far.
Yeah, the most popular one by far was protecting our kids and teens in a device-driven and social media world.
So here's our plan. We can't make any promises. Our plan is to record this one, protecting our kids and teens in a device-driven world. And then maybe I'm about to travel. I'm going to be in Romania for almost 10 days. So our plan is to do some kind of Zoom thing and record that on Mardi Gras, to Mardi Gras or not to Mardi Gras. Can't make any promises, but we're going to try to make that work. Yeah. So today it is protecting our kids and teens in a device-driven world. And this is something you and I have been thinking about for a decade or more. Yeah. We've been doing research, reading articles, talking to parents, kind of seeing what's going on with this. So this is something, and by the way, we don't have it all figured out.
Right.
This is not, there are some really difficult questions and conundrums because at first you just want to say, as a parent, you want to say, okay, no devices, no computers, no iPads, no cell phones, no smartphones. If you go that route, which there is certainly a way you can go that route, if you go that route, you're going to cut yourself off from almost any kind of interaction with anybody ever.
But you might be creating an Amish paradise.
You could be. You are living in an Amish paradise because as we say, hey, you know what, no devices. Well, then we encounter issues with that, even with our homeschool community.
Right.
The need for devices.
And the expectation of this is how I'm going to be able to communicate with you. This is how we're going to be able to access the resources that we need in an affordable way.
You can either, you personally, can choose to become a math educator, or we can give our children access to a laptop.
Right.
Because their math curriculum is all online.
Right.
When our son is doing dual enrollment now as a college student, it's required that he's online. Mm-hmm. So you can take that approach of, hey, we're just not going to do anything. They're never going to interact with a device until they're an adult. No computers, no laptops, no smartphones. If you do that, you're going to have to make some major changes. Like you said, you'll be living in an Amish paradise.
Right. And that's not necessarily, it's not necessary, and it's not necessarily the best thing. And we're going to get to why a little bit later, and we'll talk more about that.
I agree with that. And we're going to give some real practical tips, and we'll give a lot of insight here. And feel free to disagree with us. Feel free to add to what we say. We want you to interact with this material through comments, through social media posts, all those kind of things. But let's start with this. When we say, all right, we're going to protect our kids and then teens, specifically teens, they're really more exposed to this. What are we protecting them from?
Yeah. So when we're asking the question about what are we protecting them from, I think it's a threefold protection. I think we're protecting them physically. I think we're protecting them emotionally. And I think, or did I say that wrong? Physical, no, emotionally, psychologically,
yeah.
And then spiritually. Yeah. So looking at those three different aspects of the person, what are we protecting them from? So physically, what are we protecting them from? We got an article that was talking about some physical side effects from too much screen time.
Do you remember the posture discussion?
Oh yeah, I constantly am paranoid about it for myself. Now, it makes me want to.
I was terrified as a kid that somehow my posture was going to get me. Wow, posture's become a real issue.
It has, and so there was some research done on the physical effects of excessive screen time. And one of the things that they found at the Johns Hopkins Research Center was that children and teens are actually developing what they call tech neck.
Or text neck.
Yes. Either one of those.
Text neck is harder to say.
Yes.
But it's this.
Yes. And it's creating actual arthritis in the spine and the neck that's irreversible beyond a certain point. So by the time they reach young adulthood, it's you can't.
So
fix
take
it.
everything else out. That's good enough reason to say we need to think through some real ways to protect our kids here. What else?
The dangers only grow more strong as we continue. So text neck is the beginning. Some other things are research has shown that too much screen time or time with devices and technology can affect sleep habits. So it can really cause overstimulation, which can affect people's sleep patterns, children and teen sleep patterns, to the point where I know we have seen an epidemic in just feeding our children, not our children, but people feeding children supplements or melatonin in order to
nobody can go to sleep anymore. Apparently nobody can just lay down and go to sleep.
Right.
And I get, as you get older, people have medical problems and medical issues. Although I still think a lot of that is connected to screen time or even fitness or what you're doing just before bedtime. But kids cannot go to sleep.
Yeah.
And there's a problem with that.
And we all know this. When you don't get the sleep that you need, when you don't get adequate sleep, it affects everything else about your life. And you don't even have to say that, but it's, we know that. So it's true for children as well, even more so because children grow when they're sleeping. Their minds reset, the learning process deepens with good sleep. They can really absorb information better that they learned while they were awake. So it's really a scary thing to think about interrupting sleep habits. So that's one.
Some of the other obvious physical effects are, lack of focus, obesity. If your entire, if what you look forward to in the day is going out in the yard and playing football with your friends, that's going to lead to one level of fitness. If what you look forward to is I get screen time, then that's going to lead to other things. Yeah. So that's pretty obvious. Yeah. ADHD, I think we all see the connection there. Lower cortisol levels. So, screen time leads to lower levels of cortisol, which is really key for especially for young people as they grow. Yeah, those are some of the physical things.
Yeah, it's really important for development.
I think the physical dangers are serious. Yeah, but there's the psychological. What are the psychological dangers according to research? And again, these researchers may be wrong,
right?
But I don't think they're all wrong. The research is consistent. And really, honestly, it's just common sense.
Yeah. And these are people these researchers are not necessarily Christian researchers or, I mean, it's across the board, across the spectrum. So they're really looking at the issue. And so some of the psychological effects from too much screen time or device time are social withdrawal. So we see that when kids and teens spend too much time on a screen or in a two-dimensional setting, and this even extends on into the discussion of social media. But there's a level of social withdrawal that happens, the inability to have a conversation face-to-face with a person, to make eye contact with someone, to look up and be engaged in the surrounding of where you actually are. All of that is at risk.
And something like that people might not think of right off is that when you interact well with a device or social media, so it could be text, it could be some kind of social media, you're moving the person's social interactions outside of the physical space that they happen to be in.
Right.
And so they don't learn how to interact inside of the physical space that they're in. And a lot of times that's at home.
Yeah.
So you get to a certain age, you hand a kid a phone, and all of a sudden that kid's entire social world is accessible to him. So think about when you were a teenager and you're at home, you're hanging out with your mom and dad. Wouldn't you rather be hanging out with like your friends from school?
Sure, you would always pick your friends.
So you're going to say, well, hey, I'm like a click away from hanging out with my friends and talking to them. And so it just breaks down those social. And here's the thing, and I'll be honest with you, I think that we have gotten so far into this that people don't understand this. We have been conditioned that that's just the way it is. When you become a teenager, the older you get, the more you kind of hang out with friends, and that's of course true. This is the first time in human history that the family unit has not been the extended social setting.
Yeah.
And so, yes, as kids get older, 200 years ago, they're interacting more with people outside of their family. But still, their main base of operation was within their family.
Right.
Their main relationships were with mom and dad, brothers and sisters, cousins, and something that has shifted, and that's not a good shift. Mm-hmm. And so, in my opinion, our opinion, you want to delay as much as you can that social interaction outside of the main social interaction being outside of your family,
right?
Because they need you as parents to continue to be parents, and the weaker that relationship gets,
right,
the less you're going to be able to help them through some difficult seasons.
I like to think about it this way. We want our main influence flow to come from the family to our children and then through them to others.
Correct.
We don't want the main influence to come from others to our children and through them into our family.
And I think that's a good barometer. Look at your family. The Bible says that children are like arrows in a quiver. Mm-hmm. The picture there is that the family, the father is a warrior. He is raising warriors to be sent out, mm-hmm, and those warriors are going to make an impact. And so that's a great barometer. Does influence flow from your family out to the culture, or does influence flow from the culture into your family? And to an extent, you're going to have both. You're always going to have both.
Yeah.
But I think you should ask the question of, especially with your teenagers, are your teenagers impacting their friends, the social settings, their youth group, their school, their community group? Like, is there an influence coming from your family, and that group is different because your child is there and you're influencing those settings through your child? Or is your home being more influenced by the social settings they're going to and bringing them back? Is the world basically shooting arrows back into, using your children as arrows and shooting them back into your own home to cause all kind of disruptions and all kinds of cultural issues to flood in that you don't want to flood into your family?
Yeah.
A lot of that's social media.
Yeah. And not just social media, but unchecked and unbound access to those people. So when you think about having a phone and having text access with anybody anytime, then those ideas, that culture is able to reach you at any time. There's no boundary to that.
And then that culture brings in like the bullying, the self, this poor self-image kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And you have on the list here like reading less.
Yeah, like
if you read fewer books.
Right. If you have at the touch of a hand the opportunity to do something easy, something that escapes, or even having a conversation with someone that's just a lighthearted conversation, if that's always an option, then you're definitely going to be far less inclined to go pick up a good book and commit to reading it. And
I think something people don't realize about books, radio is the same way. Podcasts are the same way, by the way.
But not video podcasts.
But not video podcasts are a little different. But if you're watching by video, we're glad you're here. A book, you have to create the images. You have to imagine. I mean, I know this has happened to you. You read a book and then you envision it a particular way.
Right.
You go watch the movie and it's nothing
It's
like
such a
you envision
letdown. Yeah.
in your mind. But that's the power of a book.
Right.
You get to create, and your mind has to work harder to create, and you don't know you're doing it.
Well,
you know?
and especially when you think about the variety and the vastness of a library, or even just the books that are in our home. It's not a library. I mean,
It's a library, baby.
It's-
How many books? Okay, so people are listening and watching, and they've been to our house. How many books are in our home?
I am such a bad judge of
2,000?
quantity. At least 2,000 books.
So
we have a lot of books.
Baby, we have a library.
Okay.
Our house has more books in it than some public school libraries.
Okay.
So yeah, we've got it. We have a library in our house.
So think about the variety of those books. If you're just limiting yourself to your phone, number one, if it's social media driven, or even just as you're scrolling through whatever you're scrolling through, all the algorithms out there are telling that device what to
Right.
show you. So you're going to be fed the things that you've already been looking at, or the things you're interested in. Where a library, you can pick up a book that you don't know you're going to love, and you read it and you love it. And you've also got such a vast amount of time periods and authors and voices and all those
Now
things.
this is not an episode on libraries.
I know.
So we should pull back.
We got to
but
keep going.
We do have to keep going. But also, I will say about a library, parents can control what's in that library.
That's true.
We cannot control what is. When you put a device in your child's hand, you have given them access to everything in the world.
Yeah.
And we'll talk a little bit about filters and protections and all that. But you just need to know, when you put a device in your child's hand, or when you put your child in front of a computer that has internet access, you have just given them access to absolutely everything in the world. Imagine all that's out there, all the pornography, all of the horrific videos of people being murdered and killed, and all that's out there. All that, like bullying and all the stuff that leads to poor self-image and all that. Just imagine that was a gigantic warehouse, and you just dropped your kid off, closed the door, and said, "Hey, I'll pick you up in a couple hours."
I hope you found the fairy tale section.
Yeah, try not to look at bad things. Good luck. And so that's really what it's like when you hand your kid a phone. Okay, spiritual.
All right. So what are we protecting them from spiritually when we're talking about protection? Well, the first one would be the perversion of God's design. So, and you just mentioned a lot of those, but access to a device that has any sort of browser, any sort of ability to receive pictures or words is going to open them up to the perversion of God's design. So obviously nude images and even the craving of two-dimensional images versus three-dimensional interaction with people. That's not the way God designed it to be.
Right.
And so any and every way that God's design has been perverted, it is available just at the touch of a finger to them with a device.
Also, escapism. You have escapism rather than growing. I would say escapism rather than boredom.
Yeah.
Like being bored and having to decide in that moment of boredom what you're going to do.
Well, innovation comes from that.
Right.
I mean,
you have to come up with like fun things to do, or just things that are productive.
Right.
And if you've got the easy thing there, you just go, well, I'll just do this.
Yeah, and lacking the discipline, the self-discipline to be able to tell yourself no.
And who would have ever thought that a phone could become an idol? But you say, well, no, a phone's not an idol. Oh, okay, take them away.
Right.
And see whether or not they're an idol. Mm-hmm. And that's even for adults too. I mean, we turn to our phones for everything. And then you have a list of things of temptations that are there. I'll just read through them. Lust, envy, jealousy, pride, anger, division, selfishness.
Yeah.
Those things are all, you take the phone away, go to the Amish paradise, they're still all there.
That's right.
But they are not nearly as accessible, and you have much more control over shepherding your children through all of those things than you do if you just hand them a phone and say, hey, or put them in front of a computer or get them a social media account and say, hey, here you go.
Right. It's true.
So there's a lot of danger. I think that people who are listening to this would say, got you, okay? Now, what do I do? My 14-year-old has a phone, has had it for 3 years. I messed up. I don't know what to do now. My 8-year-old has a phone because all of his buddies have a phone. My 16-year-old, I don't know whether I should get them a phone or not, or give them access to a device. Like, how do you protect? So let's move to the protection side. So we're protecting them from physical, psychological, spiritual damage, serious danger.
Yeah.
But so we want to talk first about devices, like just devices in general. Then we're going to talk about social media. So how do you protect on the device side?
Well, the first thing that you do is you assess the needs of your family, and then you look and say, is it already out of control? Because if it's already out of control, you have, as a parent in any aspect of parenting, if it's already out of control, you have the ability to say, hey, family, we're gathering together. Yep. Let's have a meeting. I am sensing that this is out of control and we need to do something about it. I'm not quite sure yet what we're going to do, but I just want you to know that we're going to be making some changes. That's always good.
And
That's
I think
always
even
okay.
saying dads have got to lead the way in this, but maybe maybe a single mom's listening or watching, and I think even saying, I have not led our family well.
Mm-hmm.
And I have confessed to God my sin of being lazy in parenting. Mm-hmm. It's easier just to hand a device over,
right,
or of not being as protective as I should have been. I've confessed that sin to God, and so I'm going to lead differently from this point forward. And so here are some things we're going to do. Mm-hmm. Confessing that you're the one, mm-hmm, instead of going, I'm so tired of seeing these devices all around here. I guarantee if you were 8 or 12 or 14 or 16 and somebody gave you one of those devices, you do the same thing your kids do.
Absolutely.
And so you're the mature adult. You are the parent. You're in charge. They're going to hate me. They're going to hate me. You know what? If they hate you because you take a device away from them, it's not actually because you took a device away from you. There are deeper issues there.
Right.
If your child hates you or gets angry at you, there are deeper issues, and you need to work through those issues. But that does, what if you said, you know what? He loves that snake. Mm-hmm. He loves that cobra. If I take it away from him,
is his favorite pet.
He's really going to be upset. So,
yeah.
Or like we talk about all the time, you can't make that kid do anything. You can't make, and here he goes riding down the road in a car seat, buckled in that I bet he doesn't want to be in. You go, well, but I've got to buckle him in. It's the law, and it's too important. You made him do it. You made her do it. And it's the same thing here.
But think about this, the impact that could have on a family and on a child, to hear their dad or their mom say, the Lord has really shown me and convicted me or taught me recently, or however you want to say it, that I have not been parenting the best,
right,
that I have sinned in this way, using biblical language. We talk about it all the time, but this is an opportunity for confession, repentance, forgiveness, and restoration with our kids. And what does that model for them? That models for them that when we have sinned, and when we recognize that, we don't just try to cover it up or blame it on them or blame it on the device, but we own it and we say, please forgive me that I have been lazy in my parenting, or that I have taken the easy road out, or I've not protected you well in these ways. And I'm asking the Lord to help me to make some better choices and to do some things that better moving forward.
So let's get super practical. What are those things?
Okay.
When it comes to devices.
Yeah. So when it comes to devices.
Let me say this first.
Yeah.
Listen, everybody, like, pull over, write it down, whatever you got to do. Your kid does not need a phone. Let me say it one more time. Mm-hmm. Your kid does not need a phone. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter if the school says they can have them. Doesn't matter if their friends have them. And by the way, just keeping your kid from having a phone is not going to solve everything.
Right.
But your kid, your 8-year-old, your 10-year-old, your 12-year-old does not need a phone. Mm-hmm. In fact, your 8-year-old, 12-year-old, 10-year-old needs to not have a phone. Mm-hmm. If your 8-year-old, 10-year-old, 12-year-old has a phone, the first thing you need to do is get that phone from them. You need to say, you know what? You don't need a phone. And this phone, when you get older and you can handle it and you're more mature, then we'll go back down this road again. But your kid does not need a phone.
Yeah.
So I can't. I
think I heard you say that their kid doesn't need a phone, and our kid doesn't need a phone.
Your kids do not need phones.
Yeah, got it.
your mature young adult who's becoming a young man and young woman and taking on the responsibilities of a young man and a young woman might need a phone.
Still maybe not need, but
Yeah.
might could handle the responsibility
Could
of
handle
having
the
a phone.
responsibility. And in a way, I mean, in one way, all you need is food, clothing, and water.
Correct. Right.
But in the world that we live in and some things that are happening, they may be required to have a phone in order to function the way that you want them to function.
Yeah.
But your kid doesn't need one.
Right.
And it's bad for you. Let me be really clear. It is bad for your kid to have a phone.
Yeah.
Or
All of these dangers that we mentioned above are
an internet-connected
100%,
iPad
Yeah.
that's theirs, that
Right.
just goes with them wherever they go, or any kind of device, even a laptop. Your kid doesn't need a laptop. Your kid needs none of those things.
Right. So practically, what does that look like? That looks like having family devices that could be used for purposes of, like we homeschool. Like you mentioned, a lot of our curriculum is online things that we do. And so we do have some family laptops. We have very strict rules for those laptops. Those laptops are to be in common spaces that we have designated. And even with that, just because it's a common space, we also have learned that we need to be even more careful about how they're in those common spaces.
It can't be a common space with it turned to the back.
Away. Yeah, so somebody would have to walk all the way to the back of the room before they
They
see.
can't be on them when for the kids, when parents aren't there or nobody else is there with them.
Right.
They're not allowed to do that. They just
And this even goes to television because most
Right.
TVs now are connected to YouTube.
they might as
They're
well be a giant iPad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there
that
needs
television,
to be some rules.
we have pulled the power cords from our television and just pulled them out and said, you know what, no more television. And if this happens again, it may be on the side of the road.
Yeah.
If we come home
It's
again,
that important.
and y'all are watching, and look, when we come home, we're not talking about they're watching something they shouldn't be watching. We come home and they're watching Aladdin, and they don't have permission to do it, then they're in trouble. They're in big trouble because they do not access that device without our permission.
Right. And because what we know is the more comfort there is with using those devices, the more freedom they're going to feel to be able to push boundaries and go beyond what we have told them that they can do.
So when it comes to devices, there are some. So let's say, all right, it is time. You mentioned the family devices, and we're not necessarily talking about phones, although it might be. We do have a couple of old iPhones that are not connected to anything that they use to take pictures and they use to take videos. But as far as having access to the worldwide, internet and everything that's on it, there are some iPads that have that. There are some laptops that have that are family use laptops. But then let's say, all right, you do get so we got our son a phone for when he turned 16.
Yeah, so let's tell this story. So for years we had told him, we've told all of our children, you will be allowed to get a phone when you begin driving if you are mature enough to handle that. So it was never a guarantee, but that was our, he said, we won't even consider it until you've started driving.
Right.
And
Until
at
you're
that,
16.
yes, yes. And then we even said, and at that point, it will be a flip phone.
Be a flip phone.
We are not getting you a smartphone. We will get you a flip phone. So we had said that for many years. And so our oldest son turned 16 last year. And so the time came to consider getting him a phone. And he laid out his case.
He did.
He wrote us a letter.
He wrote us a letter when he was 14, I think.
He did. And then he rewrote a letter and helped us understand his position that he felt like he was ready for a phone.
Now, we said no when he first wrote the letter.
We did.
We said thanks for the letter, but no.
We did, yes. But the second letter, he has grown a lot in his
Right.
maturity, and he has shown a lot of self-growth. So we did feel like he was ready for that and did need that because he was doing these dual enrollment classes. He was going to be driving.
He needed a map app. He
Right.
needed, he needed to be able to call us if he got in a bad
Right.
spot and all that kind of stuff.
Yes. And so we went to the store to purchase him a flip phone. And what we learned about flip phones were that the majority of them are basically smartphones with big buttons.
Right.
For old people, elderly people.
So
more
you can't
experienced.
buy what we meant by flip phone. A flip
Right.
phone where you could make phone calls and that'd be about in like text, but you have to press the button 3 times.
Right.
Or the flip phone you had, that phone you loved so much that time that you ended up throwing it in
I
the
did
toilet
love
on
that.
accident.
Yeah.
While I was out of the country.
Yeah.
And but you loved it because it had a big keyboard. But so what we meant by flip phone is it really has no internet access.
Right.
What we found is that phone didn't really exist.
Right. And there may be a few phones like that. They just weren't at the store that we were at. But even still, it got me to thinking, what we needed was not necessarily just the absence of internet access. What we needed was actual parental involvement in his phone situation.
Correct.
And so I thought a couple of events led me to think through, even if he did have a flip phone that didn't have internet access, we would have no idea what text messages he was receiving,
Right.
what text messages he was sending, if there was anything dangerous coming to him via pictures. If it could take a picture and it can receive a picture, that is dangerous.
Sure.
Without our supervision. And so
tell us what you found. I want to fast forward you a little bit because
Yeah.
we've got a lot to work
yeah,
through.
yeah. So I found a phone called the Bark phone. And
BARK, like a dog.
Yes.
Bark phone.
Mhm. And the icon for it is an actual dog. But the Bark phone is a smartphone. I believe it's a Galaxy 15. They partnered with Samsung to make this phone, and it has full parental control on it so that I can, on my phone, I have the parental control app, and I determine whether or not he can download apps, whether or not he has a browser. It comes with Life 360 on it.
It also reads the texts of his text messages, and it views the images sent.
It views the images that he downloads. It views the images that he takes. If he takes a disturbing or dangerous picture with his phone, it will alert me about
And
that.
so, just to give an example, you get alerts quite often.
I get alerts quite often.
None of them have been
The first
anything,
several alerts.
I know. I'm coming to that.
Okay.
None of them have been anything that was
No.
actually bad, but
Right.
they're so it's worked
So
out
I
really
can get an
well.
alert from medically concerning content, risky contacts, violence.
You get an alert every time
Sexual content.
every time somebody contacts him that's not in his contacts.
Yes.
You get an alert. Every time he can't download an app without your permission.
Correct.
And so all those things.
He can't
But-
even look for apps without me putting the app store on his phone, and I have to choose to do that at any given moment.
So his first alert, the first alert that you got was an alert for what kind of alert was it? Don't say what it was exactly yet.
It was weapons.
Weapons.
Mm-hmm.
I was at our men's retreat, and Jackson's got his phone. He's not had it very long, and you get an alert for weapons.
Yes.
So you go to check what it is.
And it's a text message between him and his father. And you were bragging to him about your victory in the airsoft battle.
Paintball.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
paintball
I
battle.
was explaining to him how I had dominated the paintball battle, the
Yes.
last paintball battle of the day.
Yes.
And I mean, if he happens to be listening, how I had to take a very close range, about 10 feet or so shot at Brent Vance.
Yeah.
And I couldn't just shoot him once because it might not break. And if it doesn't break, you're not dead.
Yeah.
So I had to shoot him multiple times. And so anyway, I was telling him about all that, and you got an alert.
Yeah, I think the first 20 alerts I got, because it happened to be the weekend that you did that. And then soon after was his birthday party weekend where he received an airsoft gun as his gift. And so all of the communication about that as well led to many alerts.
So it works.
It works.
It works really well. So it's the Bark phone. We want to encourage that.
But here, I want to say one more thing about it. There is an app that's the Bark app that if you have a device already, you can use the Bark app to do basically the same thing. The difference is the Bark phone comes with it already in the hardware. It's in the hardware.
Right.
So there's no way to get around the most, I guess, the sneakiest ways that kids could get around some of those things. It's not possible.
And so, and it also works. There is a Bark app that will work with a laptop, but again, when the further you get into that, the less well it works.
Right. So we bought also, once we saw how well the phone worked, we bought the Bark Home, which is something that you connect to your router, and any device that's Wi-Fi connected in your home, whether it be a friend that's coming over, a gaming system, any of that will show up on there, and you can choose how to filter what you want.
Yeah, but it doesn't so much like keep them from downloading apps and all that kind of stuff.
No.
So once you move, every time you move away from the actual Bark phone, it
Yes.
gets a little less secure.
And I do have a coupon code that I'll put on our
Oh, cool.
on our
at
video and our podcast, so that if you're really interested in it,
Get the coupon code.
You can get the coupon code.
So if you get devices, and here's the thing, you've got to work overtime to stay up to date on devices because devices are changing constantly. The Bark phone will probably be outdated within a year or two.
So there's one other feature about it that I really love.
Okay.
They give updates all the time about, it's kind of a that's what they're doing now
Right.
update where they will tell you like what emojis stand for,
Yeah.
where we can like you can really know what they're communicating about when it looks like they're innocently talking about fruit they're really not, or like certain dangerous trends that are happening on
like
social media or
these dares or whatever.
right. So,
But I guess what I'm
saying.
saying is something will replace smartphones and will, because I remember like when Covenant Eyes came out,
Yeah.
and we said, "Oh, this is great. We'll put it on our church server and our devices at church." And at the time, nobody envisioned people trying to access content on a phone, and so it worked great. But then, a couple years later, wow, okay, this thing is totally outdated because nobody's doing it that way anymore.
Yeah.
And so you just have to kind of stay up on this stuff,
Yeah,
and we'll
you
come
can't
back
relax.
as much as we can. No, you cannot relax. So those are devices. What about social media? This is a little different than the phone, but I want to say your kid does not need social media.
Before we move on to social media,
All right.
two things. One thing is you need to be aware of incognito mode searching.
Yes.
And you need to be aware of ways that
Let me speak to that real quickly
Yeah.
because I want to move us ahead.
Okay.
Every browser out there has some version of a hidden browser mode. And so Google Chrome, it's called incognito. It's called something else in every other browser. But private browsing mode where your stuff is not tracked. So you need to be aware of that. So you come home, you go, oh, I'm going to check my kid's history.
Yeah.
And, one of the things, you need to know how to check your kid's history. You need to see that it's not been deleted, because if it's been deleted, then obviously they deleted it for a reason. But then the other issue is if they go to incognito mode, it doesn't show up on their history or private browsing or whatever. Every browser has this. Whatever browser you have, email us, reach out to us. We can tell you, well, it's called this on that browser or whatever. Bark does have some solutions for that, but it's also limited. There are some browsers it doesn't really work
And
well
there are some
on.
extensions that you can put onto
Yes.
the browsers that will block it.
That's super technical. So
Yeah.
if you have questions about that, reach out to us.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move
One
to social
more.
media.
The other
okay,
thing is
very quickly.
VR. So VR, just be aware that just because it's a gaming system doesn't mean that there can't be dangerous.
Yes.
things
So
on it.
the devices, every single device that is connected to the internet has the potential of having it does have dangerous content on it. Best example I can give you of this is that about a year ago, there was a story that the YouVersion Bible app had channels on it that had pornography in it. Now, let me be really clear. It was not from the YouVersion people. They didn't know it was happening. This was somebody found a way to exploit their system, basically, and create these images. And they were posting, and they were pursuing young people and posting these pornographic images. And there were hundreds, thousands of these channels on the YouVersion app. That's a Bible app. So you're pulling the Bible app up, and here are all these ways you can access pornography. So it's out there. You have to know that if that device is connected to the internet, there is a strong possibility that whatever you put on it, a Bark phone, whatever, it doesn't matter. There's a way around it. And so we had an issue with a gaming device years ago where like the kids could go in and play these games that were based online. They were not interacting with other people inside of those games. There was a waiting room where they were interacting. Now, thankfully, all the guy did was say a cuss word. His little animated guy said a cuss word, and we were like, whoa, I didn't know you could talk to people here. But you can type anything you want to in those conversations, and you can probably put website links, whatever. So it's always there. But let's move to social media.
Okay.
So social media. Again, I've already said it, but let me say it again. Your kid does not need social media.
No.
When I say your kid, I mean your 8-year-old, your 10-year-old, your 12-year-old. My opinion, your 16-year-old, your 17, 11-month-old does not need social media.
Yeah.
They will be just fine not getting a social media account, really, until they're like adults. I mean, honestly,
We'd all be better without
we'd
it.
all be better without them.
Right.
But your kid's going to be better without them.
I know.
Get your kids off of social media.
Prevent them from even starting. But if they've started,
delete their accounts. Do not allow them to have accounts.
And there are several states and even other countries that are recognizing this, and they're actually doing something about it legislatively. So Florida is
under 14 in Florida.
Yeah.
Is banned.
California, I think that 2027 is when theirs will go into effect, but I think theirs is actually going to be 16 years old.
So you have what is effectively the most Democratic state, and other than Alabama, the most Republican state, who are enacting these laws. What does that tell you? You've got Gavin Newsom signing a bill, and you've got Ron DeSantis signing a bill.
It means everybody knows it's a problem.
Everybody knows this is an issue.
Mm-hmm.
Get your kids off of social media.
It really started in Australia.
The research is so clear on this.
Yeah, it really started in Australia a few years ago when they started requiring not allowing minors to participate in social media, and really had some strict laws on that and some strict fines on breaking that law. And I just thought this was interesting. It said, for all Australians who've experienced image-based abuse with the non-consensual sharing of deep fakes and intimate images, this law was set into place. And I just thought, that's a very secular way of saying what we're trying to say.
Right.
But our children and our teens are in a huge risk. We make them so vulnerable for so many of these dangers just by simply allowing them to have a social media account.
And be aware, you go, well, no, my kid's on Facebook, and I see everything they do on Facebook. How long? Let's see, it was over 10 years ago. So 11 years ago. 11 years ago, we had a teenager, 18, 19-year-old teenager, tell us, oh, Facebook? I'm not on Facebook. Well, why are you not on Facebook? Because my grandmother's on Facebook. Mm-hmm. Well, but you have a Facebook account. Oh, that's just where I post things that I want my grandmother and mother to see.
Right.
And so beware, your kids, they're not on Facebook.
No.
They're on an app you haven't heard of.
Right.
They're on some social media app that you haven't heard of. It's not Facebook, Instagram maybe, Snapchat, TikTok. But I promise you, there's an app that they know about that you and I have no idea about.
Yeah.
And you can research all this if you want to. You're not going to stay up on the latest app.
Well, and that's where Bark and things like Bark come in handy, because they do. They are doing the research. They are doing the legwork to find out what these avenues and apps are that kids
But then
using.
Also just setting the rule in your house
Yeah.
that we don't have social media. No social media accounts allowed. When you're 18 and you move out and you are paying your own way in life, then go ahead with your social media account. But until then, no social media accounts.
Yeah.
You're going to be just fine, and you're going to be all right without it. But they're extremely, social media is extremely dangerous.
Yeah, and especially when you think about the predators. I mean, the amount of predators that are on social media that are just waiting to take advantage of our kids and our teens. Like, it is just, it's really unimaginable.
We don't have the story here, but we covered it probably about a year ago. There was a woman who pretended to be,
right.
she looked younger, so she pretended to be a 12-year-old girl, I think 12, maybe 8 even. But she dressed herself up to look very young, and she started an Instagram account. And she was going to run it for 24 hours, and she was going to see if any predators came after her.
Yeah.
Within minutes of her just posting her account and saying, hey, I'm such and such, I'm 12, and I'm just looking for friends here. Like, within minutes, she had explicit pictures in her inbox from grown men. Multiple, not one, not two, not three, multiple pictures. These guys saw her pop up, and all of a sudden, they started sending these. Within, I think, 5 or 6 hours, they shut the account down because of all the interactions they were getting. If that's happening to her, that's happening to your 8-year-old daughter, 10-year-old daughter, 12-year-old daughter, 16-year-old daughter, or son for that matter. So get them off of social media. Make it a rule in your house. You don't have social media accounts.
Yeah, and try to remember, I know you do, because we still experience this as an adult, but not as much. Try to remember the feeling as a middle schooler, older kid, of thinking, but everybody's connected this way. Everybody has this, and I'm an outsider. You feel outside, like an outsider. And how wrong that is. That's
right.
Just not the way it's working. And that one little segment of your life, like, do you even really, I mean, how much impact would it have made if you had
Here's
not
what's
been
interesting.
in all of that? Like,
I remember feeling that way.
Yeah.
I remember feeling like everybody's filling the blank. I don't remember what it was.
right.
Like, I remember feeling that way, but I don't remember what
Me
it was that I was missing out on.
Yeah.
And your kids are going to really feel that. And that is
Well, except
real.
the Timberland boots. I do remember everybody wore Timberland boots, and I really wanted some.
I remember that everybody had Umbro shorts.
Yeah.
And like, I didn't have Umbro shorts.
Yeah.
And you know what? Now I'm extremely glad I didn't have Umbro.
You know what? We're grateful we don't have pictures to look back on
Sure.
of you wearing Umbro
Right.
shorts, right?
But anyway, so, and here's the issue when it comes to social media. A pastor friend of mine said it this way: keeping your kids off of social media is like not letting them sit at the cool kids table in the lunchroom. So there is a social cost to it, but you have to do it anyway. Yeah. So yes, we don't want to minimize the pain of a teenager.
Yeah.
You know, it's real to them. We may go, oh, that's nothing, you know, whatever. You should know about the real issues of life. Well, those are their issues,
Yeah.
and they're real to them. But we still need to be the parents and say, I know
That's right.
this is harmful. I know this is hard. I know this is difficult, but you can't have this. So keep them off of social media. A couple of things that I want parents to be aware of that kids do, and this will also kind of transition us into that stewardship. Your kids are smarter than you about this kind of stuff. It's not so much that they're smarter than you, it's that they're more determined than you. And so, you know, think back to the time like when you were a kid and you spent the night with a friend and you wanted to do something. Maybe it even wasn't that bad. It's just something you knew your parents didn't want you to do. Like, let's just say eat ice cream at 2 a.m. And you knew probably your parents weren't okay with you eating ice cream, but also they're asleep and you're not. And so you go eat ice cream. Here's the thing. Your parents have your friend over and y'all are doing a sleepover or whatever, or you are spending a night.
Spending a night.
You're spending a night. You got a friend spending a night. And and your parents think, oh, well, that's cool. You know, you have a friend spending the night. Y'all are just going to play and have fun, and then you're going to go to bed. But you started thinking 3 weeks earlier when you found out your friend was going to be coming over. You started thinking about all the things you could do. And you started thinking, hey, mom and dad usually go to bed around this time. And so if we're real quiet, we can do this, we can do that. It never entered into your parents' mind that you might do those things because they're not kids. Mm-hmm. And so they're thinking, I'm tired, I got to get to bed, you know, whatever. Well, your kids, you're thinking, oh, well, they are probably just, you know, trying to connect with people on social media and share pictures of all the wonderful things that they're doing in their life.
Right.
No, they're thinking, hey, how can I get away with this? That's the nature of kids and teenagers. So I want to share with you a couple of, without sharing any names or details, a couple of things that we have encountered. So we've encountered people who their parents shut them off from social media. So what they do is they download the app to their phone while their parents are away, either when they're at school or they're somewhere else. They log in, they do all the social media they want to do, and then at the end of the day, they delete that app. So Instagram's deleted off their phone. And their parents say, my kids don't have Instagram. Or we've also seen this. Oh, my kid has an Instagram account, but I count it all the time. I'm in it all the time. I see what's going on. Well, did it ever occur to you that they might have two accounts? They have the one that they want you to see and the one where they're doing everything else. We've also encountered people who say, well, I just took my kid's phone away, which is, we highly suggest that. Take it away. They don't need it. They go to school. They get somebody else's phone. They log in on Instagram, Snapchat, whatever it is. They do all their social media stuff. They share all the pictures they want to share, whatever, and then they log back out. We have even encountered one case where kids working with other kids, these were teenagers, working with other teenagers, had somebody drive to the abandoned lot across the road, put a phone in the mailbox for them so they could go over and get it. They would use the phone throughout the day, and then at the end of the day, they'd go put it back in the mailbox, and their friend would drive by and pick it up.
Doesn't that sound like addictive behavior?
Yeah.
Okay.
Doesn't it sound like idol worship? Doesn't
Yeah.
it sound like, yeah. But it also sounds like kids.
Yeah.
It sounds like teenagers. I'm going to find a way to get around this.
Right.
So at the end of the day, yes, you need to make it difficult for your kid to do the things that you don't think they should do. But if you don't shepherd their heart, if if you don't steward this
Right.
and you ignore the spiritual maturity, then it is just a waste of time.
Yeah, and that's where we're gonna land here on this. Found a really great article on one of my favorite websites, desiringgod.org, about this very topic. It's titled "Teens and Screens: A Parent's Guide to Tech Stewardship," and I just want to highlight a few things from the article. It's kind of a Q&A, and the questions and answers were all excellent, but at the beginning, he talks about the biblical principles and the boundaries and the disciplines that can be applied to smartphone use that Christian parents should model and discuss with their children
Can I read
before
this
giving
one
them
line?
their own device. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, so on the modeling, he says, modeling is key. This is not a teenager problem. Grandma's on Facebook too much.
And mom's on Instagram too much.
Yep.
So he really starts with saying this is not just a problem for kids and teens. It's a problem for families. It's a problem for everybody. And so we all need to constantly evaluate our usage of devices and social media and phones and ask, am I stewarding it well? Am I modeling this well for my kids? And there are going to be a lot of times where we're going to find we're not, and we need to make adjustments, and we need to confess and repent, and so, but we can't do those things if we're not looking honestly at ourselves. So we need to start there. Then he also moves on to say there's a spiritual dilemma at play. It's this: our smartphones simply give us what we want most. This is what our kids need to know, what we all need to know. We are not a victim of our phone.
Yeah.
And so we are giving ourselves constant reinforcement, instant gratification to every single thing we could possibly want. And that's a bigger problem here. We're not simply the victims of Silicon Valley. We are sinners led by our own evil desires and our impulses inside us that must be crucified. And I really appreciate just that perspective from the beginning in this article. So the author of this article really concludes with 4 stages to flourishing. And he breaks these stages down, and we're just going to move really quickly through these 4 stages. This first stage is that we identify tech problems externally. We recognize, internet can be bad, social media can be bad, this app can be bad, this algorithm was out to get me, all of these ideas. We externalize that sin, and we see that it came from the device or from the tech.
But it's like all sin. The problem is not out there.
Exactly.
The problem is in here.
It's not completely wrong. Yes, the enemy is out there to still kill and destroy us, but it's our own evil desires that lead us to that destruction. So that's where we see stage 2, which is where we can identify tech problems internally. We can say, I must next become aware of my sinful inclinations that are living inside of me. So it's because of my sin that these things even work on me. And so that's a really important realization to come to. Then once we do that, we can move to stage 3. You want to tell us about stage 3?
Yeah, stage 3 is thanking God for technology. So there are so many great things. This podcast would not exist without social media. This podcast wouldn't exist without those platforms. We wouldn't have access to get this out. And so we can, now that we have the right perspective, the external perspective, the internal perspective, we can now say, God, thank you. We've dealt with these sin patterns, and so now we can use technology for the glory of God.
That's right. And we can see the beauty in it, we can see how we're able to be connected to people that we would not have been able to be connected to outside of those opportunities. So once we experience that gratitude stage, we can move to the final stage, which is that we are called to live out our tech stewardship. And this is really where it comes to using tech for the glory of God, using it to advance the kingdom of God, and living out your calling using technology and using these things. And so really not just getting stuck in that stage 1 where the whole problem is the tech and the apps and the devices and like we said at the very beginning, the no, just throw them all away, just crush it. I would be lying if I said I have not envisioned several times taking a hammer to my own phone, to your phone, to our laptops, to the TV. There have been times where I've been so frustrated with the way that I have been consumed by it, or the way that our family has been consumed by it, that I've wanted to just throw it off the balcony, you
Right.
know, and that's not the right response. And so I think these 4 stages really do help us assess where we are in our maturity level and our responsibility and stewardship of it.
And I think there's so many good things in this article. Time will not allow us to really cover them all. We just want to point you to this article. It's
Yeah.
Teens and Screens, A Parent's Guide to Tech Stewardship. So you can just you can Google that,
Yeah.
or you can go to Desiring God and Google, screens or
Yes.
something like that, and it'll come up.
There are 8 questions he lists. I'm going to read through them rapid fire. There are 8 questions that he lists that we can use to help kind of evaluate where we are in this stage. How much of my media is for escape, and what am I escaping? Does my screen time leave me more recharged or more depleted? Is my media diet enriching my time with Christ or eroding it? How consistent is my personal devotion life? What does my prayer life look like? Is my communion with God drab and boring, or is it alive? How do Christ-centered sermons and songs affect me? And what does this say about how I protect my heart for Sunday worship? And are my digital desires serving my God-given duties, or are they distracting me from them?
Great questions. Great way to kind of land the plane here. Parents, you have to be intentional about this.
Yeah.
It comes back to putting Jesus at the center. I mean, and honestly, this sounds crazy, but devices can be at the center of your life, your home, your family, your kids' lives. You want Jesus at the center, and then moving out from Jesus, the most important things should be the closest, and then way out here, somewhere near Pluto, it should be a device. And how that connects to your family should be so distant. It's there, but you should really be intentional about making sure it's on the outer orbit of your family. So, hey, thanks for joining us for the first video episode. And let us know what you like, what you don't like. Let us know how it looks. Lindsay worked hard on all this setup.
We still have one missing piece, so
yeah, we've got some
we'll
other
add
pieces. And so let us know. We want to hear your feedback. We want to do this well, so we would appreciate hearing from you. The best way to do that is to reach out to us at info@thec2life.org, and we'd love to hear from you.